It is our pleasure to be joined by one of the most formidable voices in all of college football media. He is also a heroic defender of the model. Josh Pate is in the house. What's up, man?
I look, I don't know if heroic's the word. I fight to defend the model, but I have taken several bits of shrapnel and I got scars all over my body from defending that thing this year. So, and a lot of it's come from Norman, Oklahoma, and rightfully so, because when you go beat Texas, you get to do whatever you want to, and I just have to stand there and take it. I will before we start, I'll tell you guys this. I was in the Detroit airport watching Brigham Young and Oklahoma State last week. And you could tell so much of America wanted that OU Texas rematch because when Brigham Young ended up winning, there was this deflation. And you're in Detroit. You know there is no Brigham Young population center there. You know there's no vested interest. And you look around, and first off, these people just watched the Iron Bowl ending like 30 minutes earlier. And so they're still waiting on the same flight. Brigham Young wins. And it's what are you disappointed about, sir, from Tucson, Arizona? I just wanted to see OU Texas again, and we ended up not getting it.
Well,
I know you meant
unfortunately,
Brigham Young
Oklahoma earned
loses,
that.
but I knew what you were talking about. They were cheering for BYU. I
Yeah,
understand what you meant.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm backwards. Look, it's been busy. I don't know when the last time you slept is, but I don't even know how to spell the word anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're just so busy. That's what happens when you're so popular.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Let's
popular is one word. Do you understand, by the way, that I can't say that because HR will get on to me. There are policies at our company that I could take advantage of right now and technically just not work in December. And I couldn't be fired for it. And yet I'm flipping through the handbook, and that's one thing. And then I'm thinking to myself, you idiot, you worked construction before this. You worked in a fabric warehouse before this. If you ever hear me complain, Ikard, if you even hear me agree with you when you say that sort of thing, I want you to just hit stop record, and we need to quit. We need to just go do something else for a living.
little intervention action.
Yeah,
I mean,
If you
all the
start,
hard work through September, October, November is for December, right? I mean,
that's
that's
it.
that's when it's not work.
That's right.
let's dive into these Power Five championship games. Let's just go in order. Let's
All right.
start with the Pac-12 on Friday night. Oregon. We've seen these two teams play. They are a big favorite in this football game. Is that a disrespectful line to Washington, or does that feel about right to you? Because all Washington has done is won every game on their schedule.
Right. I used to hear from Mimo all the time, point spreads cannot be disrespectful. It's impossible for a point spread to disrespect you. Now, it is possible for people to disrespect you when they talk about you. But if a point spread's disrespectful, you just go bet it. Like you take advantage of it. I am concerned about it. Like I am concerned that so many people are backing Oregon and so many people are saying what someone like me thought even after that game, that it's like if you're in the minority on something and then all of a sudden it becomes the super majority, you kind of want to back away and you want to say, hey, no. We don't need you over here. Y'all go back over there. And that's kind of how I feel about Oregon right now. I was at the game in Seattle. I thought they were the better team moments after the game, but they didn't win the game. And so it was what it was that day. They had 2 fourth down opportunities in Washington's 10-yard line, 0 points. Turned it over on downs again at midfield. And you think to yourself, oh, that's flukish. Like any given game, that goes one way or the other. Washington has held opponents, I think it is, to 13 of 33 on fourth down opportunities this year. So that's a trend. Like they've been good on fourth down defensively, but what they're not good at is third down. I had the number here. They are 89th in the country. Third down defense, Oregon's top 5. That's where the game's decided. It's a third down game because elsewhere, Oregon's got big advantages. The only advantage that Washington has that they could leverage here is precision in the passing game. If their receivers go off, I mean, that neutralizes everything and it's game on. But I think there are enough incremental areas where Oregon has the edge where I'm picking them to win the game. I'm going to go out there Friday night. I want to be there when they close the door on the Pac-12. I'm probably going to wear this black shirt and maybe black pants, just full funeral garb. Sad but true. It is coming to an end. I think Oregon's going to win the thing, and if they do, man, they're probably in the playoff. I think they're in the playoff. I think the only head-to-head they could potentially have is like if Bama beats Georgia, it could come into play. But I mean, what a season regardless for Lanning. And look, what a season for Kalen DeBoer up there, even if they don't make it to the playoff.
Yeah, a lot of people, whenever you don't know a whole lot about the two programs and haven't watched them in detail a lot of people kind of go with coach and quarterback, right? That's who's going to win the game. And this one, I know Bo Nix and Lanning are the far more popular duo there, but gosh, it feels like that's pretty tight whenever you look at coach and quarterback. This pretty good matchup.
Yeah, it is. So that's what I tried to stay away from, because if I did that, there is not a 9.5-point gap in head coach QB combinations in this game. That's where I look at defense overall. I'm normally not looking at notes, but I happened to do my show last night, so I have them in front of me. Oregon's got the better pass rush, Oregon better on third down, better overall run game. So that's where I started to look elsewhere. And that's when I say incremental edges. I stacked up the incremental edges, and over the span of 4 quarters, I just think that that's what's going to carry the day for Oregon.
Is if you think, okay, Washington wins the game, is it just Roma Dunze goes insane in the game? Is that what it looks like to you?
It's not just him. So Adunze's the NFL stud on that team, but Polk's been good. McMillan, they got him back. He's really good. Bernard's good. So they got 3 or 4 receivers they can throw at you that allows Adunze to do what he does, because you can't just bracket him and solo focus on him. They got other guys that can cut you up pretty good. Like I said, if they go off, I mean, if you get to the end of the first quarter and Penix is like 6 for 7 for 183 yards already, it's game on. Everything about the point spread is rendered irrelevant. Some of these other edges Oregon has are going to need to be big edges, because you guys have seen it, especially covering Big 12 football in years past. When you get a hot quarterback and some of these receivers just start turning 50-50s into 70-30s or 80-20s, the other stuff doesn't matter, because that negates so many other edges you may have.
Yeah. Well, does this make you feel a certain way about the Pac-12's demise? I mean, because it's been a great season. It's been the most entertaining conference for the whole year. And it's going to go out with a bang with a great game on Friday night. And I'm kind of sad it's going away. After, a month or two, I won't care anymore. But right now it's like, dang, this has been a lot of fun. How you feel about it?
I appreciate the brutal, that is Teddy level honesty right there. It is. I'm sad. Now I won't care about it in a couple of months, but I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm sad right now. Here's the thing I keep on going back to. The Pac-12 put its best foot forward this year, and Southern Cal had nothing to do with it. That's what I keep coming back to. Everybody thinks if the Pac-12's rolling, USC must be at the epicenter. They were an afterthought. It was Oregon State. It was Utah without their starting quarterback. Arizona coming out of nowhere with Jed Fish. Yes, that's a big deal. And I don't know if it was a 1-year only thing. I'd like to at least see in some parallel universe what the conference would have done with new leadership and emerging head coaches if we were allowed to move forward with it.
Let's move on to the Big 12 championship game. A matchup that you correctly predicted before the season, and congratulations, sir. You deserve a lot of credit for that. But I'm going to use one of your terms here. How can Oklahoma State avoid a complete and utter splattering from Texas in this game?
Do you want to keep viewers, or do you just want me to be real with you?
Just straight up, Pate. Come on, you know how we roll.
They're going to get body bagged. It's not going to be good. They're going to completely annihilate them.
It's a bad matchup for Oklahoma State.
I fully encourage Mike Gundy and his staff and players to package everything coming out of my mouth up, put it in any hype video, get your players completely indoctrinated with the idea that no one believes in you, because I don't believe that Oklahoma State's going to win the game. It's a terrible matchup, even when it comes to the kryptonite for Texas, which is get their offense down in the red zone and let them be inept. Even there, Oklahoma State's red zone defense is in like the 60s or 70s. So even there, I think Texas is going to be okay. I'd be really surprised if Texas just didn't go off offensively. And so if you got it in the cards to score 38, 42 points on them, all right, well, that's game on. That's a different story. I just don't think it's there. I think it's a good story that Oklahoma State is in the game. I think that's about where the story ends, though.
I'm more concerned with how you predicted this matchup. How did you know that a guy never carried the ball before was going to lead the nation in rushing behind what is still an average to below offensive line?
Good question, Teddy. It's a question, though, that I don't want to give away for free. When we do the pay-per-view version of this, I would give that answer away. Here's what I looked at, though. So I think it was, let me make sure I have the stat right. Okay, so this was the craziest stat in the world to me. Oklahoma State plays in the Big 12, and yet they played one team from Texas this year, and it was Houston. They had the most favorable schedule draw I had seen out of any of the Power Five relative to their conference mates. And I thought that somehow, some way, Gundy would figure quarterback out enough, which he did with Bowman. And the other thing is, I just thought way too many people were paying attention to all the dudes who left in the portal. They didn't pay as much attention to some of the guys they got. And anybody who they get is going to be underrated, because if they're properly rated, Bama will get them or Texas will get them. So I just didn't think they were a bad team. And I thought Gundy had performed at his best when there were low expectations. And frankly, I rolled the dice a little bit. But now that we're on the back end, I'm just going to tell you I knew the whole time, and I had no doubt.
How good do you think Texas is? I know you were at OU Texas. You saw them in person. How, in the pecking order of college football this year, do you think they're elite, or do you think they're just short of that level?
Well, so I was at the Bama-Texas game too, and that's one where I didn't know what to make of it at the time, because I did not know, I don't pretend to have the most trained eye in this sport. I think I'm watching Bama play at as high a level as they can, but I'm watching Bama turn the ball over pretty egregiously too. And Texas gets out of there with, I think it was like a 10-point win. And I knew at the time, I don't have the full context on this win. I'm going to need a few months. Well, I look back and I think I probably could have taken half a dozen teams into Tuscaloosa that night, and they would have been able to really push Alabama. That's no knock on Texas. It just means I probably don't put the end-all be-all stock in that win that I once did. It's a very good win, but it doesn't prove the world to me. So then I've watched them move forward. Some close wins there, which just means they're an imperfect team, but a really good team. I think they may be peaking at the right time. But in retrospect, when I look back on their body of work, where I'd classify them as a really, really good team with the potential still to climb another rung on the ladder, like Clemson has done this before in recent history. In years they've won a title. They've had some close wins during the season, and then all of a sudden it's like they've put their foot fully down on the floorboard at the right time. If Sark and his team can do that, like, they could win a national title. They could beat anybody. I think right now they're playing at a really, really good level that could still bump up another level, if that makes any sense.
You can be real quick with this, as we probably need to move on, but how good is Quinn Ewers? How does you think he stacks up with the quarterbacks on the other college football playoff caliber teams?
I don't know that like the consistency has been there, like quarter to quarter. When I watch Penix, I don't worry about him having a lull in production. I've watched Bo Nix, like, he doesn't really have dips or lulls in production, but at the same time, at least with Penix, he doesn't have the run game to lean on. And even when Brooks goes out, like, they've still got Baxter there. They've still got a complementary football team that he can lean on. Some of these guys know they got to go win it. And fortunately for Ewers, that's not totally the case. However, when we get, and if they get into a playoff situation against a Michigan, against a Georgia or an Alabama or someone like that, he will have to eventually win a game. Stetson Bennett had to do it. He had to end up winning games. And they leaned on the other parts of that football team all year, but they played Bama in a title game, and he had to make about 3 or 4 throws in the fourth quarter. And that's literally the difference in winning a title and coming up short, pat you on the back. At least you won your conference title. So I think he's got the potential, but at the same time, like I said with his team, I think he is a really good player who has another gear to him that probably still needs to be hit.
So you like Oregon. You like Texas. Let's move on to where you'll be on Saturday, and that is Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Can the lowly underdog Alabama get it done?
Look, I think you guys will agree with me. We've been sitting here for a long time waiting for Nick Saban to catch a break in this sport. We're waiting. This poor guy in Tuscaloosa, an underdog again. Will the cards fall his way this time? I slightly lean Alabama to win the game, actually. So they're a 6.5-point dog, and I think they have as good a chance, if not a little better chance, at beating Georgia. It's really close in my mind. The reason I went with Bama is but both of them are built to beat each other. Like, they build to face each other. And last week, one of them beat Georgia Tech by one possession. One of them survived miraculously at Auburn, and I couldn't care less about either outcome because I don't think by the second quarter Saturday that will be in anyone's mind, even though a lot of folks are focused on that this week. I think where Alabama has as good a chance to succeed against Georgia as anyone is Bama's vulnerability is especially on the edge of their offensive line and pass pro. Georgia does not have a linebacker that has more than one sack on the season. They don't get after the quarterback the way that the last two Georgia defenses have. So they're good defensively, but it's about how you attack. It's about the matchups. And if you give Milroe time, there is no quarterback that's been better in the country with time to throw at hitting explosives than him. And it's because of the element his legs give. And especially option stuff and on the perimeter, it's given Saban defenses fits. It gives Kirby Smart defenses fits. That's because it gives every defense fits when you can do that. And I almost think Georgia probably understands Milroe's going to get yards with his legs. What they think is let that be between the 20s and let's just lock it down in the red zone. Georgia's defense is in the 60s in red zone touchdown percentage, though. So Alabama, I think, is top 15 offensively. So I think there's some matchups that lean Alabama's way. My biggest concern with Bama and why I flip-flopped on this pick like 4 times yesterday is they're banged up on the defensive front. And what concerns me is Georgia 1st and 10, 2nd, 5, 3rd and 2 move the chains over and over and over again and sustaining drives and just not letting Bama get the ball enough and wearing Bama down. And if Bama were fully healthy, maybe I feel a different way about that. But that's my biggest concern, part one. But on the other side, Carson Beck will see the best pass rush he's seen all season here. And he's facing 2 NFL corners in Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold. And they haven't faced that this year either. So Beck has not been mistake prone. If someone's going to force mistakes from him and force Georgia's offense into mistakes, this would be the moment. I just like by this much, by the width of this piece of paper, I ended up going Alabama to win the game. And if they do, by the way, I have no clue what the committee's going to do.
Yeah, that's kind of been the question is, well, Alabama and Texas played each other. What does that mean for the playoff? I think the really interesting thing is, what does that mean for Georgia?
Yeah.
That would be crazy. Your 2-time national champion winner just hanging there with 1 loss. It's wild.
Yeah, I don't even – so the Georgia thing is like over here for me. Everybody, when I've watched on TV and whatnot, they keep going to the Bama-Texas. And to me, that's not a debate. Texas beat them head-to-head. If it's roughly comparable, Texas is in. They should be. Whether I think they're the better team or not, like that's you got to honor results on the field. So it's never been Bama-Texas to me. It's been Bama-Oregon. That's the head-to-head potentially that it could come down to. And we got to see what Florida State does and we got to see what Michigan does. But I think that if it were to come down to Bama-Oregon, this is where I'm thoroughly confused. And I will admit readily, I don't watch the playoff show and I don't really dive into the resume stuff until the last week because I always think it's going to sort itself out. Well, this year, maybe it won't. So I was looking at the resumes last night for the first time. And I looked at the ranked wins, which is a dumb stat, but they keep it anyway. And I'm looking at the strength of schedule thing, and Bama and Texas should be listed ahead of Oregon as far as I could see, and neither one of them are. And it makes no sense to me. And I've had people try and explain it like I'm 5, and it still makes no sense to 5-year-old me. So if it comes down to Bama, Oregon, and you're just going to have to say to my face as a committee member, if it happens, Bama just beat the number 1 team in the country that hadn't lost in 29 games and has 2 titles in the last 2 years, but we're going to keep them out and we're going to put Oregon in. And that means no SEC team in the playoff. I would have a very tough time actually seeing that. It's easy to say it. I want the committee, if it happens, to sit there on national TV and say, Bama's a 12-1 SEC champ, but they're not going to the playoff. I have to hear that and actually see it with my eyes to believe that.
No SEC team. It's just hard to believe that would happen. I don't know. The Big Ten championship game.
Are we going to do this? Are we really going to do this?
Here's the best question about it. How many points does Iowa's defense have to score for them to be competitive against Michigan?
This is really good. I think 17. I think 17 non-offensive points is the answer. So I want you guys to do an exercise with me. Okay, take your left hand and go like this right here. All right, take your right hand and now put it right against the left one. All right, now look up to the ceiling and just pray. Just say a quick prayer for Iowa. Because 17 points, I think, is what we need non-offensively. It's not even enough for them to force turnovers. They have to score the ball when they turn the ball over. I don't know that I have ever lived in even an alternate universe where sports books are in on the joke, like sports books offering prop bets of over under a half a point for the Iowa team total in the first half and second half. You're literally betting on whether they'll be shut out or not. I've never seen that before. That's Xbox stuff. That's like pros versus Joes level stuff. That's if we took the good high school team and let them play Texas. That's that kind of stuff. So I think 17 is minimum what they have to have. There's a real world. There are several paths here with a spread of 23.5 where Iowa covers and they get shut out. That could easily happen. Easily happen. I just don't know. I have no clue what the path is here. And I never talk like that in a conference title setting, especially. But like Michigan played Maryland a couple of weeks ago. At least you could say, hey, Maryland's outmanned, but you got Tagovailoa. They've got a decent passing game. If they just strike fire, maybe. There is no fire for Iowa. What do they do offensively? There is nothing I think that could happen. So it has to be non-offensive. You have to force Michigan into enough third down situations and pray that they're dumb enough to put the ball in the air, and you're fortuitous enough to pick it off and score multiple times, and that's the path. That's your Big Ten championship preview.
I think Iowa could be in for a harsh reality. I don't know that there's a single team in the country that has benefited more from the division breakdown that they've been in, and things are about to change.
Yeah, I think they know it. I think the plus part of that is no one in their fan base expects anything to happen Saturday. So they could be 42-3 and it's, hey, we won the division. It's a really weird thing up there. Like Wisconsin was not happy with their situation and went and got aggressive in hiring. Nebraska, ditto. Indiana, ditto. And Iowa, now granted, they've got much better results than Indiana, but it's almost like Iowa looks at the NIL and looks at the portal scene and says, we're good. Like we're happy in division Big Ten, but division Big Ten's going away. And you've got Southern Cal and Oregon and Washington coming into the conference. And you're also going to have to literally be one of the two best in the conference. I don't know any path forward for Iowa unless you're just happy, being a good, solid program. And there's value in that. There's a lot of value in that, but I don't know. I'd expect a little more if I were an Iowa fan.
Yeah, we will. We'll see what the future of that offense looks like. Unfortunately, Brian Ferentz not in the future plan. So it was so entertaining. So I am going to miss that. I'm going to miss that as a content piece of Iowa football. Now, this is an interesting ACC championship game.
Yeah, it is.
You've got Florida State with Rodemaker instead of Travis. The injury that was, so unfortunate for that football team. Louisville coming off a disappointing loss to Kentucky. I feel like a bunch of people are cheering against Florida State because they don't want to see the chaos scenario unfold. And they're like, Florida State's not one of the best four teams. Like, how do you view this game, man?
I think Louisville's going to win the ACC championship. So last week, they were -3 turnovers and had a turnover on downs against Kentucky. I think it is a huge, even if this was week 7, it would be a huge bounce back spot for them. But given that it's conference championship week and you're facing a backup quarterback, it's not just that in a vacuum. It's what Florida State has to be because they don't have Travis. They have to be a run-oriented team. Like last week, their number one back had 3 touchdowns against Florida. He had to have that. I think he had 95 on the ground It's not like this Heisman-worthy stat line, but they did what they needed to do. They could not put the ball in the air. Well, this week, they got to do the same thing, except this week, they're facing a top 15 run defense. And they're facing a top 15 run defense that understands they're probably going to be one-dimensional. And they're facing a Louisville team that, for all the talk elsewhere, you got one of the best transfer portal quarterbacks in the country this year in Plummer. Like, he's the one who's been under the radar. I didn't think anyone would be saying Louisville's got the quarterback advantage against Florida State, but because of injury, here we are. And they've got a really good run defense. I think they match up very well. And I also think that they're in a big do-up spot because of what they did last week. I think they're going to win the game. And if they do, think about the predictions I just made. Now, whether you agree with them or not, let's just, for argument's sake, say it happens. That means Washington as an undefeated falls, Georgia as an undefeated falls, FSU as an undefeated falls. So hit the number crunch button and reassess the landscape. Now, what would that mean for the playoff picture? That's where a Texas and a Bama and an Oregon and a Michigan and Georgia's in there still, even as a one loss. I don't know what they would do. I really don't know what they would do.
Is that what we want, though? Do we want a scenario where all the pressure sits in that conference room wherever they're meeting?
Here's what I'd want. So let's say I was not a fan of any team and I'm just an agnostic bystander. I think back to virtually every playoff we've had, and there have been blowouts in the first round. That's because there have been teams that are prone to being blown out in the first round. If, for example, we had either a Bama or Georgia, we had a Michigan, we had an Oregon, and we had a Texas, you may get blowouts, but there is no team prone to being blown out there. You have 4 high-level matchups, or 2 of them, and you have 4 high-level teams, dynamic teams. There is no TCU in that mix. There is no Washington of 2018 or whenever that was in that mix. You put Washington in this playoff or Florida State in this playoff, and they may deserve to be there. Those are double-digit underdogs. You put any of those other 4 in there, there is no double-digit underdog, man. Those are competitive games. And so if I were just somebody watching in rural Idaho, that's what I'd be pulling for. I guarantee you TV execs are pulling for that. And I think deep down, although they could never admit it, that committee wants that to happen. I don't necessarily know that it clouds their judgment, but I think that's what they want as well.
Well, I agree. Should we be finding the best team? Maybe, but I think everyone probably wants the most compelling football games, right? I mean,
I heard
the argument.
Yeah, I heard Bill Hancock. I think it was Heather Dinich that tweeted out last night a quote from Hancock, who I think is the head of the committee or whatever his title is. But he said something that I thought was really misguided, and frankly, he shouldn't have said. He said, most deserving is not part of our criteria. It's not in our lexicon. It's never been a part of our process. We are about finding the 4 best teams. To me, it's a reckless statement, even as much as I want to see that, because that's really dipping into the more power rating sort of world. Now, I love doing power ratings.
That's the JP poll world.
Yeah. And so imagine how chaotic this world would be if the JP poll was being used to seed a playoff. Because I'm the first one to tell you when I put those things out, this is not a ranking. This is not how I would put teams in the playoff. I got FSU at 13 right now. But if they're undefeated, I think they deserve a spot in the playoff. I think they'd get boat raced once they got there. And my question is to anyone, like, how do you find that balance? In other words, do you think this is Burger King where you just pull up to the window and you kind of combine your order in whatever perfect way suits you? Or do you think it's actual sport where things happen on the field and then based on merit, we field the playoff? Because I get arguments from both sides. And I used to be, hey, let's put the 4 best in regardless. But then at the same time, what am I supposed to tell someone who goes and wins every one of their games, including like Washington, for example, beating a team that I think is better than them? Well, that's the result on the field. It doesn't matter what my piece of paper says at that point. And so then you got the quarterback injury. And should a committee full of people be allowed to reassign value to your team because one of your key players is gone? I just think a lot of that's antithetical to what competition is.
So if you had to predict the 4 teams, I know you're not a big predictions guy. What do you think the playoff ends up looking like when those little tiles flip over on Sunday?
So based on my predictions, it would be Michigan. This is in some order. It would be Michigan. It would be Texas. It would be Florida State's not in. It would be Alabama, I think, makes their way in, and Oregon. I think those would be the four. So that means Georgia's out, and that's where I've gotten a lot of pushback on that. But look, if my predictions pan out, that's the way it goes. The big unknown to me is I don't think there's an upset potential in the Big Ten championship game. But if let's say we get a situation where some of the chalk does hold, let's say Florida State does win. And so you're looking at a situation where you've got one spot for a Texas, Alabama, Oregon. I think there's one scenario that no one has factored in. It's like 2014 when Ohio State didn't just beat Wisconsin, they beat them 59-0 as an underdog, and no one could have ever fathomed that. So all of a sudden the sentiment went from they're on the outside regardless to, hey, we got to put them in. There's no way we can keep them out. This may be unlikely, but what would you do if you turned on your TV, fourth quarter Saturday, Bama's up 34-10 on Georgia, instead of it being a razor tight game either way like we expect? Then all of a sudden, what do? Do you still say, hey, head-to-head rules the day for Texas? Or do you still say, well, Oregon was ahead of Alabama going into this weekend? That's the one thing that I think no one's factoring in because, and I agree, people think it's virtually impossible to run it up on Georgia. I'm just saying if it's a weird like outlier of a game, I don't know that may not like invert a lot of people's train of thought at the 11th hour.
Sign me up for it. That's what I want. I want all the chaos because ultimately I don't care. I don't care what happens. I usually lean towards what's going to make the most people the most angry. That's kind of where I fall.
Okay, I'll do one more then. One more. Okay, so Texas wins in overtime against Oklahoma State. Just total dogfight. Oregon wins convincingly. Bama wins convincingly, like we just said. Is there any world where the committee looks and thinks Bama's resume is better than Texas to the point where the head-to-head doesn't get factored in at the end? I don't think there's a way, but I don't know because I freely admit I don't get the ways of the committee.
I assume you could understand that if Texas gets left out, we will not be heartbroken here.
I understand. I don't think that's too difficult to grasp. But
you can imagine.
Yeah, think about this. If Oregon is one of the teams that goes in over them, imagine Texas folks looking at the mutual opponent, Texas Tech, and they just boat raced them, and Oregon struggled to get past them. And they would have that just ready. That's in the hip pocket. They're ready to throw it out there. What if Bama gets in over Texas and they say, wait, you're telling us we beat them in their building by double digits, first time since 2007, any out-of-conference team has done that, and we're the ones that are going to sit out here? That's about to happen? Do you understand? Texas folks would dead serious look at you and say, do you know who we are? That's what they would go to. Do you have any idea who we are? And the committee would be like, they'd send their representative out there and he'd say, oh, nice weather we're having today. So that's the kind of answer I've been hearing from him for about the past month anyway.
Yeah. Boo's got a tough job.
It's just Boo. It's just
he's got a tough job. Now, we've already taken up too much of your time, but there's one thing we need to address before you get out of here. You tweeted, you got some OU fans riled up, my man.
Oh, I know where we're going. Okay, let's do this. You
tweeted that Texas A&M is a better job than Oklahoma. Now, you also said that Oklahoma is a much better program than Texas A&M.
Yep.
This is, as you can imagine, a lot of OU fans listen to this. I'm going to give you the platform to explain what you meant because I don't want all of our fans being super mad at you, man. I love you. You know that. So, here you go. Here's your platform. Please explain, sir.
Okay. I could do a Boo Corrigan response and just dodge this entirely, but I'm not going to. I'm going to meet it head on. Most of the time when I find myself in these disagreements, a vast majority of my response is just, here's what I didn't say. So you took care of it though. Like Oklahoma laps Texas A&M as a program. Oklahoma laps Texas historically as a program. So present day and historically. And I would never debate that in a million years. Their trophy case, laps A&M. I would never debate any of that. All I was saying, and my entire philosophy on valuing a job, is it is only today moving forward. And if I am Nick Saban, if I'm Kirby Smart, if I'm an elite head coach, what I think is capable with me there. So I have boxes that I want checked, like how I value or define value for a job. I look at resource pool, and that just means how much money can I make? How much money can I pay my assistants? Now NIL structure is very important, and they're never going to take a backseat to anyone down there. I want facilities checked, and they're palatial down there. I also want administrative synergy, which I don't think they've had in the past. This is where Oklahoma's had a huge edge. And people have said, well, Josh, that's the value of a job, though. And I agree. If I'm Nick Saban, if I'm a Nick Saban caliber guy, the first thing he did before he took the Bama job is he did a full assessment of sort of the bureaucracy and the administrative state of Alabama. I know this for a fact. He circled some names and he said, this person, and this person is a problem. You can either have me or you can have them. You can't have both. And there was some disassociation that happened inside the program before Saban took the job as a result. What I'm saying is, when you hire the right coach, and if that's me, I take care of all that before I agree to walk in the door. So that's out the window, or you're not getting me. So if I clear all the administrative BS, if I have the synergy and I have all the boxes checked, I don't think there are very many jobs that take a front seat to Texas A&M. It wasn't just Oklahoma. I don't even think they deserve to take a back seat to Texas. And folks think Texas is the best job in college football. I just don't think they take a back seat if everything is properly leveraged. I've never thought A&M struggles because they lack the resources. I think they struggle because they've made terrible hires. They haven't made terrible hires. They haven't made great hires, which is still a crapshoot, even if you got all that going for you. So every point Oklahoma folks made about the program, I agreed with. I never argued with it. And the synergy administratively, I agreed with. They've got it at Ohio State. They've got it at Oklahoma. They have not had it at Texas A&M. I simply believe the right guy walking in the door demands that as a predicate, and therefore it would be a moot point moving forward. That's all I meant.
Well, that works, but you've eliminated the biggest problem with the entire place with just kind of a stroke of a brush, right? The people that have built the palatial facilities, pumped their money into the NIL that makes it so attractive and all those things, like those are the people that you're asking to step out.
Yep.
That's a huge step. If you can eliminate that and get those people to take their hands off of the program, then you probably got something. But that's been a problem, not just at A&M. That's also been a problem at Texas. It looks like that's what Sark has done whenever he went to Texas. So maybe that's possible.
So you said it better than I did. You should have just answered before I did, because that has been the problem there. But I'm also glad you said that's not an A&M problem. It's a major college football problem. And I'm glad you brought Sark up too. So you just hit like a grand slam for me. I don't think most of college football would have defined Steve Sarkisian as a grand slam hire when he went to Texas. I think most people acknowledged he's failed a couple of times as a head coach. He kind of rehabilitated his image at Alabama. We're going to give him a shot, but it's kind of a roll of the dice. Let's see how it works out. The reason I say it that way is Sark didn't walk into Austin like Saban walked into Tuscaloosa. He didn't have the gravitas to throw his weight around like Saban did. And yet he started to deliver results. And as a result, what you talked about started to happen. Some of the tumblers started to fall into place. So Mike Elko does not swing that kind of weight either right now. And he walks in, and there probably is some of those cobwebs that you still got to brush out of your face behind the scenes. In time, if he starts delivering, which always has to happen, if he starts delivering, then you afford yourself the equity to start giving an if or an either or. And if that happens, and it does end up clearing itself out, if you sling blade some of those weeds out of the way, that's when I think you can put the pedal all the way down. Basically, what I'm saying is if A&M ever gets to a spot where they can put the pedal all the way to the floor, I don't think there are many jobs better than A&M.
That's fair. Hopefully that answer will make some OU fans love you again, buddy.
Well, I will take individual emails from them because trust me, I'll be able to read every one. I won't get many, so I'll be able to read every one.
Pate, you're the best, dude. I'm so happy for you. You deserve everything you're getting, man. And we appreciate you taking the time, brother. Thank you.
I appreciate it, guys.